So today's question is, why are mobile coaxes so thin? And the answer is pretty obvious, but it's probably not so obvious. So the obvious answer is that it it's thinner so it could go more easily through parts of the car, such as the door hinges, such as the firewall or the roof. Because you drill the roof, well, unless you have a car like mine with a glass roof, but if you have a metal roof, you drill the roof. My first Honda Civic had that, by the way. You route the coax through and you're able to route that down. Now, of course, if you have a thick piece of coax, you're not able to do that in most vehicles. But if you have a thin piece of like RG58 or RG174, you can definitely do that. However, there is something else at play. I mean, the thing is that the mobile radio environment is one of pretty much compromise, but it's also one of where everything is in close proximity. So, for example, in a home station, typically you would have the antenna up on a roof or up on a tower where you have basically maybe 30, 40 feet of coax or 10 or 12 meters of coax, for those of you who live in metric land. And you have, my coax runs are like 210 feet, so that's about probably, 70 meters or something like that. And yeah, so it's a lot of coax. And with that increasing coax comes the increase in attenuation. And attenuation essentially is where you lose your power, where it's transformed into heat and it's wasted. So for example, if you have a really lossy piece of coax, you could be putting out 100 watts and only getting like 25 or so at the antenna if it's a really long run. But you see, in a car, it really doesn't make a difference because you have everything close by, you have a short coax run, and you're not losing a lot of power. In terms of received signal, it really doesn't matter all that much unless you're receiving really weak signals on really high frequency bands such as microwaves and such. But for the transmitted power, yeah, it does matter. Here's the other thing. When you're transmitting in a vehicle, you're not usually transmitting more than at most 100 watts. And most people do 50 or even 25 watts. At that point, since you're using decibels, you're really not losing that much power. And, in terms of like mobile operation, the amount of power really doesn't matter anyway, to an extent, because a lot of times you're working repeaters or you're working simplex or you're working HF, and you have either the repeaters or the propagation giving you enough, how should I put it, enough propagation or ability to send a signal, where having a lot of signal reaching either the ionosphere or the repeater is really not going to matter. One interesting story is that for years I ran a 50 watt mobile in Trinidad and Tobago. And then when I came to the States, I ran a 50 watt mobile in my car as well, 35 on UHF. And recently I put an antenna on the back of my minivan. That time I still had the minivan. And I initially I ran a handheld transceiver and I ran only 5 watts into that antenna. And I was able to work into all the local repeaters, solid copy. I was able to make all of them. I was not able really to do too much simplex unless I was around town. Simplex means without a repeater. But I was able to use the repeater, and that's pretty much all I needed to do. Now later on, of course, I got a Connect System CS800D, which is a very nice mobile radio, even considering the fact that it's DMR. And I was able to get into all the DMR radios, repeaters. I was able to get into some of the analog repeaters quite easily. And I was able to get into repeaters that are pretty far away. So clearly the amount of coax really did not matter. The amount of power I had sort of mattered, but the coax really wasn't taking away too much of that. And then you'll find that I was able to just get out just fine. Well, I hope this was helpful. This is Rhea and 2RJ. And like I always say, peace and 73. And of course, we are now Rhea's Ham Shack. See ya.